Hello and welcome to this edition of the Potomac Local Podcast. I am Uriah Kaiser. I am the publisher of Potomac Local News and your host. Joining us on the Potomac Local Podcast today is Delegate Elizabeth Guzman. She is the House of Delegates member, the current one serving in the 31st District. That district, of course, includes portions of Prince William County and Fauquier County. Delegate, thank you for joining us today.
No, thank you for having me.
So you are running for re-election to hold on to that 31st district seat. Just some background here. You came into the General Assembly in 2017. You were elected as part of a blue wave, a new class of delegates that came in. You replaced longtime Republican Scott Lingamfelter, who was in that seat for a long time. And when you came in, we saw a lot of seats turn from red to blue. Of course, this was after the election of Donald Trump. As you now have to run every 2 years to hold on to that seat, I don't know how you get anything done having to run every 2 years, or it seems like you're always in election mode. But as you're back knocking on doors and talking to voters, do you get a sense that Virginia will, at least Prince William County and the portion of Fauquier that you represent, will still feel very strongly about Democratic leadership?
I will tell you that the answer at the doors is exciting. Definitely people are excited about the new delegates making promises and delivering on those promises. I think that many of us run on improving public education, expanding Medicaid. So when we go to the doors, people remember us. Because one thing that we talk about the blue wave, I also wanted to reinforce and take this opportunity that if there is something that resonated with the voters in 2017 was that the issues they care about. You know, we were represented, as you said before, with other members that were not engaging all of the communities. And one thing that I made clear in 2017 was that I was running on accountability and transparency, accessibility as well. You know, not knowing my delegate myself that was representing me for the last 16 years was definitely not something that I wanted to as a delegate, that I would represent all, even those who didn't vote for me. On that message, we have held at least 20 town halls throughout the district within these past two years. We sent newsletters, we sent surveys to all of my constituents, not only those who supported me. So now when I go back to the doors, people does appreciate being informed, knowing of what's going on in Richmond, coming many voters from a place that didn't know what a delegate does, didn't know what issues are discussed in the Virginia Assembly. And I think that is what is resonating to votes. But we cannot disregard what happened in the past. When I look at my district, for example, in 2011, only 21% of the voters turned out. 2015, another election similar to this one, only 27% of voters turned out. So I had to do the job of being at the doors, telling people what is at stake and what is important for them to get out and vote. And that means also investing in communications.
So your district is one, and the part of your district in Prince William County in 2016, Hillary Clinton won at Prince William County, and in Fauquier County, your district, of course, straddles the county line. Donald Trump won that entire county by the same number of points. So, in a sense, Prince William County politically is a polar opposite of Fauquier County, and it's your job to represent two polarized peoples. How's that worked out for you?
So I would have to say that representing two different counties definitely keep me busy as a delegate, because when I'm meeting with my partners in local government, for example, I have to meet with the local governments for Prince William County and for Fauquier County. But for me, it's just, I think the issues that I'm fighting for are relevant to everyone who lives in my district. There are different priorities, of course. You know, Fauquier County, I represent a lot of rural voters that definitely wanted to know that they are listened. And for that reason, I attend and go to the meetings with the members who live in my district and the members from Fauquier County, from the Virginia Farm Bureau, for example. And it's a different type of campaign. We usually have to do it in partners. but I don't want anyone in my district from Fauquier or Prince William County to think that their interest is not represented in Richmond. They do have a voice, regardless of where they live, and my job as a delegate is to represent both. And I meet, as I said earlier, with everyone who represents in local government and anyone who comes through my door in my office in Richmond. They also get the same amount of time. I meet with school board members from Fauquier County. I meet with the school board members from Prince William County. And I just make myself accessible and letting them know that there is someone in Richmond that represents them both and not only one county.
It has been difficult for this new class, the one that you came in with, to get legislation passed, right? There's not a lot of Democrats who came in to replace Republicans who have had a lot of legislative wins. One of your, however, you do have a legislative win, and that was a bill that you introduced to essentially have the state speed up the application process for nurses who came to work here with their military spouse. Why was this something? The governor signed this bill, you introduced it. Talk a little bit about the thought process behind this, because again, this is one of your legislative wins.
Sure. As you said, it's one. I was proud also to pass legislation during my first year as well. I was the only freshman delegate who was able to pass legislation out of the Courts of Justice Committee. One, if you people know about the Courts of Justice, well, I don't have to tell you anymore. But what I can tell you is that number one, when we learn about this issue by holding a town hall with veterans who live veterans and active duty military who live in my district. And when I come, I reach across the aisle, I get prepared, I get the facts, and I meet with the members of those committees in the Republican side and the Democratic side. Because when I'm in Richmond, it's not about of what I represent for Democrats. It's for the ones that I represent for everyone who lives in my district. And those are the conversations that I have. I remember this issue, for example, went to the one on nurses, went to the health, welfare, and institutions. Now, the composition of the committees, even though it's a slight majority on the Republican side in the House of Delegates, when you look at the committees and subcommittees, it's a supermajority, right? So when we're talking about a subcommittee of 8 members, there are 3 Democrats, 5 Republicans. I talk to everyone who is in the subcommittee who's going to listen to my bill. And if they are not available, I meet with legislative assistants. I meet with the legislators. I try to get them everywhere they're available. If it's in the elevator, we meet in the elevator. If it's in the lunch room, I meet with them in the lunch room. Now, an issue of veterans and active duty military, of course, it has very good reception for everyone. So I would say it's challenge than any other issues.
And there are a lot of veterans who live in this area, right? I mean, a lot of veterans
absolutely
retire here. So would you say that you are more inclined to take up these issues in the future, to go to fight for veterans? Obviously, we have a veterans healthcare center coming to Vint Hill. I'm not sure if that is in your district, but
it is.
And so that is coming. We know that the legislators have fought to bring that here. Would you describe yourself as a veterans-focused candidate?
Absolutely, and I have veterans and I have active duty military, because if you look at my district, I'm in the middle of Fort Belvoir and Quantico. So I have people who are in the active duty or are in the civilian service who work for the military community. And I ran 2 years ago on being the voice of those voiceless, and it is my job, to advocate for their benefits. And I am coming back with more pieces of legislation that will talk about veteran issues. I actually, as I was mentioning earlier, I held my second town hall for veteran issues. We learned a few more issues that are important to them. And I co-patron quite a few bills and chief co-patron bills as well with Republicans and Democrats when it has to do with issues. Yeah, yes, I am the champion of the residents of my district, and I will continue to be.
Let me ask you about a bill that you introduced that is not in your district. It was the Aviation jet fuel taxation distribution for revenue of Metro, right? This bill also it was left in the finance committee, so it didn't go forward, didn't pass. But it stipulates that this 5 cents per gallon tax that would be collected on jet fuel, presumably, for instance, purchased at Dulles Airport by large airline companies who fuel their planes there. That money would then be released and given to the Metro Silver Line extension, should they start to do that. So that obviously not in your district. There are people who may live in your district. I can't imagine, as the way commuting patterns flow, they're taking the Silver Line into Loudoun County. Why did you introduce this bill? What's the thought process there?
Well, number one, when I ran in 2017, I would say that I will not for tolls, because tolls are very personal to people who live in my district and in the Northern Virginia area. So this bill, what it does was, the whole purpose of this bill was to decrease an increase that was coming on the Dallas toll road. And from my priorities to reduce tolls or not vote for tolls, this was part of the message that I delivered. Now, what this bill does, so in Virginia, many years ago after 9/11, many people didn't want to travel from Dallas or from Washington, D.C. because of what happened, and it's just been, I can't believe it's been 18 years already. But for people who are not new in the district and who have been here in Virginia for a while, and like myself, we went through recession. Not many people wanted to fly for those. So what the government did is provided an incentive for airlines. And I said, hey, come to Virginia, fly from our airports, and we are going to provide you a discount on the taxes when you buy more than 100,000 gallons of gas. So we are 18 years later, our economy is not in recession anymore. Now it has improved. And the reason behind that bill is that anyone who is an qualifying airline, which means an airline who buys more than 88 billion gasolines of gas, they will pay, instead of paying half of a cent, they will pay a cent. So we can use that money to defeat the increases that were planned to come on the Dallas toll road.
So you're not a fan of tolls, and you want to make that very well known, and your focus there is on the Dallas toll road. You have residents who live in your district who no doubtedly travel on Interstate 95 and 66. 95 already has tolls, and 66 is getting them. It seems like the state, at least since 2012, has been supportive of tolls, right? They've added them. They've converted HOV lanes on 995 to toll lanes and extended them south. Now they're going as far south as Fredericksburg. We're seeing 4 new toll lanes being built outside the Beltway on I-66, and inside the Beltway, the state runs the most expensive toll operation in the region, from Dunloring to Arlington. As a reporter who's covered transportation many times, from people across the aisle, they tell me the state is out of the road building business, and that job now falls to these toll providers, these tolling companies who are coming in, and like on 66, they're building the roads, and then they'll toll the roads to get their money back. Where do you stand on that?
Well, number one, I would like to get the facts straight. Both decisions were made not after I was elected. These decisions were made before my election, and the promise to my constituents is not to vote for those.
But do you think Virginia's out of the road building business? I mean, obviously,
I will finish.
Yeah.
So, for example, this year we had I-81, and the proposal was to build tolls. We had meetings with the Secretary of Transportation and the Northern Virginia delegation, where we were discussing this, or the delegation who represents the constituents who are paying tolls, and we can get the burden, from my constituents. So I asked many questions, and one of the answers that I had was that these organizations come and absorb the cost for renovations. And I said, well, if these organizations are getting a loan to absorb the cost, I'm sure that the state can do that as well. We don't need to reach out to, international investors to do this. And I was very vocal, and there was my colleague Tim Hugh on the meeting that he can validate what I just said, and I said we have to hold, we cannot just go and build, and implement tolls, and then we said, oh, there's nothing that we could do within a contractual obligation of 75 years. That's unacceptable.
Which now,
Because it's
and to
the
be clear,
state.
the concessionaire who is running the toll lanes, they will the state still owns the toll lane. The taxpayer still owns the toll lanes. However, the lanes are leased out for a term of 75 years
Absolutely.
to, for instance, company Transurban, which operates the 95, 395, 495 express lanes, and so. Well, also talking about transportation here, it seems every time a politician in our area says the word metro to Woodbridge, metro to Prince William, it gets headlines and people talk about it. And we've been writing about these types of stories for years. When we talk to Marty Noe, who is not only on the Board of Supervisors in Prince William County, but he's also the chairman of the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. And he calls Metro a pipe dream, something that may never happen for Prince William County, despite how many times we talk about studying the idea. Where do you stand on that? Is it something still worth studying, or should we put more attention on to the existing train service, Virginia Railway Express, or OmniRide bus, or slugging, or maybe a ferry? They're actually talking about building in Occoquan up the Potomac River.
I would say that I support all, number one, but it has to be a golden goal at the end of the day. And I know that Metro will not happen overnight, but my question to the former or the current president of MBTA is why we didn't think about this when we built the amount of houses that we have built in Prince William County? Why we didn't plan for the future before we're trying to bring thousands and thousands of residents every year? And I will tell you that we do, all of the things that you mentioned are necessary, but there has to be some compromise from the local government where we shouldn't be proud to house the worst bottleneck in the country. It's not acceptable that even on the weekend, we have to be stuck in traffic on Miniville Road, on Prince William Parkway, on Old Bridge Road, and going to 95. It's insane. Even going to Fredericksburg on the weekend, on Saturday and Sunday, is just a nightmare. So we have to think outside of the box. We have to invest more money on public transportation. And that, once again, the ultimate goal should be, because it's not going to happen overnight, I want people to know that when we bring Metro to Virginia, it's a process of 10 years, 20 years. We may start, there is a study out there that was done in 2012, for example, of the rapid transit and the extension of the yellow line that is stopped from Forehand to Hybla Valley to Beacon Hill.
In Fairfax
and the next
County.
Stop, and then the second stop was supposed to be Woodbridge. What Prince William County government did to expand that bus rapid transit? Nothing. So we need to take responsibility.
So do you blame the county government for not taking the reins and advocating for a Metro extension to Woodbridge?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. The Board of Supervisors this week in Prince William County heard a presentation from the Washington Metropolitan Council of Governments, which is warning of a housing crisis and is encouraging more affordable housing to be built in the area ahead of the Amazon expansion and ahead of the Micron expansion happening in Manassas. Obviously, Amazon in Arlington, Alexandria, Micron in Manassas, both are very large economic development projects that are coming to the state. The board, as it sits, they were not very receptive of the thought of building more homes. They say that schools, and they are already overcrowded. Prince William County does boast some of the largest classroom sizes in the region at 35 students per teacher. So the thought of building more homes and putting more kids in schools didn't sit well with them. But we do know that development is coming and people will move here to work at these places. So what does the affordable housing future look like in your eyes?
Well, I think that it's going to be difficult, but I think that everyone deserves to live where they are currently living right now. And if there is an Amazon deal, which I voted against because we didn't have these systems in place prior to, I feel like for every policy, we're always being reactive instead of being proactive. We should have all of these systems in place before we take any decision. So I think that now we are in a position where we're going to have to be reactive and trying to find solutions for those people who are low income and are in the county and they deserve to stay in the county, and we have to help them. You know, they are residents of our county, and we have to take care of them as well. Now, this is not about, because I'm sure that people will talk about, oh wow, she is pro welfare and she doesn't think that somebody could uh, change their life and they will end in welfare system for the rest of their lives. That's not talking about. I'm talking about for those people who have to pay. I mean, the rent in Manassas, where Manassas City is 1,200 a month, 1,500 a month. If you multiply that, you know, we're talking about paying only on a one-bedroom apartment at least $16,000 a year. And that is just for housing. What about food? What about utilities? What about transportation? What about, so it's, I mean, when we talk about low income, let's talk about that a low income person could make $7.25 in Virginia.
You know,
So it's a lot.
let me ask you this, because again, this is one of those unique cases where your district straddles two very different counties. Prince William County has a pro-growth policy. They are for economic development. They are for big business. Whereas Fauquier County has it's quite the opposite. They really don't want a lot of development. The town of Warrenton is developed, but when you get outside of that area, the county really prides itself on being rural and farmland. When you're out knocking doors in Fauquier County, do you get any indication that there is some anticipation about all this growth that is coming our way because of the Amazon, because of the Micron, because of these economic development projects, that their protected farmland that many in Fauquier seem to love so much could one day be threatened?
Well, I wanted to first say that I don't think that Fauquier County is anti-business. That is not accurate. We have a lot of businesses that are working well in Fauquier County, but what is the key on this? The key on this is that county supervisors in Fauquier County, when they make a decision, they reach out to the community. They hold town halls. People know of the decisions that are being made and why those decisions are made. When we are talking about Prince William County, what many people are learning is that when those developments and projects are already being constructed, and it's like, when did this happen? How come nobody told me? How come my county supervisor didn't tell me that this was coming up? And then you see this disarray that people come and complain. I mean, when I go and knocking on doors, for example, in Four Seasons, and I'm talking to my constituents, they tell me that none of them were informed that there was a little built behind their community. Now, when I go back to the County Board of Supervisors, they tell me, well, we had this meeting and we presented the budget, we hold a public hearing. But what I see right now is, the county, I'm sure, has a communications department. And when you see that your message is not getting to the people, you need to change it. You need to improve it so people know of what's going on. Now, you're saying that Prince William County doesn't, they don't want more houses or something, or
The board of the Board of County Supervisors wasn't receptive to the Washington Metropolitan Government's call to build more affordable housing.
well, I wish they could have this sentiment many years ago, because we wouldn't be in the position that we are today. What we are facing today with overcrowding schools, with being the worst bottleneck in the country, are poor decisions, poor policy decisions that didn't think ahead of the game before. And now we're in a position where we want to do, if there's going to be development, the development needs to be including the community during that conversation.
Let me ask
The
you.
community needs to know about that.
Let me switch gears on you here. You said that you voted against the Amazon deal, and so did a fellow Democrat, Lee Carter. We talked to Mr. Carter earlier this week, and he gave us some reasons why as you have, why he voted against that. But we also talked to Mr. Carter. We asked him about Governor Northam, right, the leader of the Democratic Party in Virginia. Mr. Carter, along with many Democrats, called for his resignation back last session when he became embroiled in the yearbook photo of the blackface scandal. Mr. Carter, again, he says that there's only so much he as a delegate can do. Of course, he called for the resignation. He says that he has no confidence in Governor Northam's ability to lead, and he has zero confidence Governor Northam will go on to run successfully for another political office. How do you feel about Governor Northam, and do you feel like, despite so many calls from so many Democrats like yourself to resign, the fact that he didn't, has that hurt your chances this year at the polls?
I don't think so, because I don't. I can do what I can do from a delegate. I cannot make anyone resign. At the end of the day, what I listen at the doors is about what I've been fighting for and what is my message. Now, I think that now Governor Northam is trying to do his best to try to. It's not going to be fixed. Those pictures will not be forgotten. However, the fact that he is building the African American board, the fact that now we have an officer of diversity that is going to address the disparities among many institutions on the state. I was in Hampton Roads during the 400-year celebration of the first enslaved Africans who came here to Virginia, and he got a good ovation. I didn't hear any boo or anything that people were against him.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
and the Washington Post
to be held responsible for that? I don't think so. I did, like as you mentioned, I called for his resignation, but there's so much that we could do. But now we are getting ready. Let's take care of business, right?
So the
Let's
Washington
take care of
Post,
those disparities.
the Washington Post reports that then the governor was not well received at public places, and of course he did stop doing public appearances shortly after the scandal. Fast forward now to September, and again he is well received again. It seems to, like as you said, those people are cheering for him once again and welcoming him back into public spaces for events. But I did want to get your you brought up something interesting. The efforts that Northam has done since the scandal to reach out to the Black community and bring on people to focus on diversity. Some have said this is pandering. This is pandering to one side, one ethnicity, race group, and it only happened after the blackface scandal. What do you say about that?
Well, I could say that I don't think it's accurate, because actually, if you go and look at the formation of that board, was created during session. It was presented by Delegate Lamont Bagby, and I happened to be in the room of the Committee of Rules. Well, I was there, and I think the filing deadline for bill was January 10th. So definitely the intention was out there. It doesn't have to do with pandering. I think he did a good job. Also, for example, I got an invitation for Hispanic Heritage Celebration, which is another minority group as well, and I got it last year, and he's going to do another reception this year. So I don't think that is a political game, and he's not pandering in one group. Virginia, I think he was very vocal that he wanted to make Virginia a place when he was running for office where everyone, regardless of where you come from or where you were born, be welcome in Virginia. So it happens. People make mistakes. As a person of color, I could tell you that racism exists, and it's going to take years to heal. But we need to start by acknowledging that mistakes that we have done in the past. And I think that Governor Northam has acknowledged that he made a mistake.
You have tweeted a picture of a campaign sign that was torn down, and you said that you were dismayed by that, and we obviously put the sign back up. Your opponent, DJ Jordan, who is a black man, who's a Republican running against you, also condemned that. Do you think that was an act of racism, taking down your sign? Do you think that we have a larger problem of racism right here in your district that we're not talking about?
I don't think so. There's people there is all of this fake news going out there on TV that are not real, is creating a lot of hate among the communities. I would never been treated, being as a minority in the House of Delegates, being treated like somebody was racist against me. That is not true. Nobody has been racist at the doors. Actually, many people commend me and congratulate me for putting myself out there to run for office, regardless being an immigrant. And I don't think that is the case. I don't think that racism was behind that act of vandalism. I think that act of vandalism was a consequence of a lot of hate that we see on the news every day when we are actually picking on communities of color.
And before I let you go, I just want to get a sense of what your legislative priorities are. Should you win re-election and head back to Richmond, what can the voters expect? What types of bills are you looking at introducing this next session?
Oh, well, I would start by, I think I did a press conference a week ago about providing paid sick leave for individuals who live in Virginia who work full-time, 40 hours of paid sick leave for people so they can use to go themselves to the doctor, to take their children, to take their spouses, to take their grandparents, or parents, sorry, their parents. Many of us in the sandwich generation, like myself, I take care of my mother. I'm blessed to work in the public sector, but there is many people who do not. And this issue was brought up to me by my constituents, where they said, listen, I am excited about having health insurance under the Affordable Care Act, but guess what? I only have 2 weeks of vacation in my employer, and those weeks of vacation is time to spend with my children. If there's anything that you can do for me, please make sure that in Virginia, Virginians have access to paid sick time. I'm going to continue to be the champion for special education. I think that we need definitely more resources for public education and mainly special education. Our special education teachers and special education classes are being right now challenged with the limited amount of resources. So public education will continue to be one of my priorities. Criminal justice reform. I will continue to fight to increase the age of minors trial as adults. Right now in Virginia, a 14-year-old could go to an adult prison, and that is not acceptable.
And you had a bill in this past session that
Exactly.
was left in the committee. You wanted to increase that age from 14 to 16. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, and I will continue to do that. Environmental issues, I will continue to hold accountable those corporate polluters that don't want to take responsibility that they are polluting our environment.
Specifically, your bill on plastic straws, correct?
Correct.
Do you plan on bringing that one back?
Absolutely. And I just want to give, a little explanation, because talking about fake news, there are fake web pages that built on my name. There are fake pages that just take a few words of my bills. This bill would allow localities to opt in or opt out to ban or tax plastic bags or polystyrene products. And that's what it talks about. It's not an imposition. If localities want to go pro-environment, they should have a vehicle to make that decision and protect our clean air and clean water.
Delegate Elizabeth Guzman serves in the 31st District in Virginia's House of Delegates. She is running to keep that seat. Delegate, thank you so much for joining us today on the Potomac Local Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And that is this episode of the Potomac Local Podcast. We will see you next time.